And Rabbi Blank, it's great to see you. And I know your background, not just your, like intellectual background, but your backdrop. But tell us what we're
Yeah,
looking at.
we wanted you to feel at home, like you were, I was seeing your background. Of course, here's our congregation. I'll duck down for a minute. This is a picture taken, I don't know, maybe already a month ago, when it was the first Shabbat service that we could meet again, and we held it outside. That was the
I can
rules.
see the masks. I can see people wearing masks here.
Everybody wearing masks, except for the service leader, and social distancing. Everybody's sitting at least 2 meters apart, unless you're in your family unit.
Right, we're about to do the same thing here next weekend, also in the park
Hmm.
for our families, and we're looking forward to seeing each other, even though it's going to be a little weird. And that's the garden that Temple
Yeah.
Shalom, I think, helped bring about, isn't it? That
Yes, that's
helped
our
plant some of those
garden,
seeds. Yeah.
blooming. I was on sabbatical for 6 months and came back the 1st of May and saw, yeah, everything growing. And we had Havdalah last week, and we picked the spices from the garden. Everyone was so
Wow.
happy.
Well, your congregation is growing too. I'm going to call you Stacey in this, otherwise it's going to get weird. Stacey, can you tell us all, those that are not familiar, a bit about the story and where Shir Hadash is, and the story of why there's a Reformed congregation in that community, and how you came to be its rabbi?
Okay, so in brief, the town of Hadassah, it's kind of a periphery town to Jerusalem. It's about 20, 25 minutes outside Jerusalem in the beautiful Judean hills in a very rural area, but again, very close to the city. It was almost like a border town set up in the 50s because that was the border with Jordan at the time. So since then, it's grown a lot. I've been in the congregation 8 years, and the town itself has doubled in size with a lot of kind of more crowded building. But it's a very pastoral place, and the community, we celebrated this year, no, a year ago, 20 years of the congregation, and that's how long that it has existed. Started by people who had moved out to the town and were looking for something to do on Yom Kippur, as Israelis generally tend to do. And that's what they began a minyan for Yom Kippur, which turned into um, uh, Shabbat services, and turned into a congregation. The building you see was given by the state, one of 8 communities in Israel to receive a building from the state, stark precedent, which has gone on to help a lot of communities receive buildings. And we had a really nice little renovation. So I don't know if you saw it on your last visit, but next time you come, you'll see our inside really looks all the time more and more like a beautiful synagogue with even an eternal light made by vitras made by one of our congregants in remembrance of the golden bush, the burning bush. So that's our congregation, and yeah, like doing a lot of things which normal congregations do, like prayers and bar mitzvahs, and even some bat mitzvahs, and youth programming and educational programming. But as people who have been to the community know and probably have heard me talk about, what the unique thing is that the issues of synagogue and state in Israel sometimes create a lot of division. And so Hadassah has really been this amazing place for different streams of Judaism to get together. We just had Tikkun Leil Shavuot, which was also outside, social distancing, very cold night. But it was a partnership of 3 or 4 congregations, and they were Orthodox congregations, and us, the Reformed congregations. A lot of great things like that happening in Hadassah. It's an amazing community in that way. People who don't want kind of extremist Jewish elements moving in, and work very hard for that. And yeah, so that's a little bit about what we've been doing, and being on the Green Line, separating between Israel and the West Bank, with our closest neighbors being ultra-Orthodox settlement of Beitar Illit, and Palestinian villages like Batir and Husan and Vadi Fukin has also made for some interesting encounters and kind of attempts to really envision what true dukiyum, living together, without taking all the politics into account, can be possible.
Can you give us one example of one of those shared programs?
So first of all, so Hadassah residents have no problem visiting Beitar Elite. They take the bus into Jerusalem from Beitar Elite. They go to the bank and the supermarket, etc. But on the other hand, there's a lot of fear surrounding relationship with Palestinians. But members and really grassroots efforts, as the community tries to not be political, but to support dialogue. So grassroots efforts of congregants meeting community leaders in the Palestinian villages who want peace. And our community has been a host for a number of meetings of Palestinians and Jews from all over, again, the whole spectrum of religious observance in our community to just help people get to know each other. I have been working very hard. It's more of a personal project on a women's dialogue. I feel that women's voices are not heard enough, and also given the makeup of our society. So we managed to have a group that met a number of times over the past year of women from neighboring villages who don't tell anybody that they're meeting with Israelis except for their immediate families, but want to meet us and are very courageous and surprising feminists, educated women. So that's a bit of what we've been we were able to experience living in such a unique place like this.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, we've been visiting, your congregation now for a number of years, and I know that it is this, as you say, it's this unique convener. Your presence, your congregation's presence in that community, I think, has helped, as you've described it and as I've seen it, to moderate what could be this ultra-Orthodox move and the tensions that surround that. You talk about the Tikkun Leil Shavuot you did the other night, and then this work. Do the Orthodox congregations do this kind of work on their own, or is it only when you kind of invite them to partner with you?
That's a really interesting question. It began many, many years ago, actually through the Jewish Agency with the Partnership Together, that they offered fellowships for communities that want to work together. And there was someone in the Orthodox community who just come back from Shlichut in America, so kind of got that. And one of our congregants who kind of goes back and forth between the communities. And at the time, we were pretty much us and that one Orthodox community. And it was a very difficult conversation. And it took a year to really just get people to even step foot. And I think that set the groundwork, because ever since then, people have we had a lecture last year that Naftali Rotenberg, who works at Van Leer Institute, but is a rabbi of a neighboring town, Orthodox rabbi, came and gave a lecture, and we invited the other congregations to come, and there was not an issue. They came, they spoke. So I think it was a very difficult process at the beginning, but that the door was open, and these are your neighbors. Anyway, people are neighbors and become friendly. And once the door is open, it's much easier to walk through it.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot to open that door. You really have. I mean, that's also points to the importance of neighborhood and community, and how these big geopolitical issues they can dissipate if we can just talk to our neighbors. And I think we found that here in Vancouver also. Not that there's great geopolitical issues in our city, but in the midst of this pandemic and in the social distancing that we've had to do and the quarantine and stuff. We see a collapsing almost of these social circles into these small neighborhoods and communities. I mentioned at the beginning of our service, because Rabbi Brown and I live 10 houses away from each other, 10 doors away from each other, that in our neighborhood all these kids now finally come out and they're running around and they're riding their bikes and they're in each other's yards, maybe not in each other's homes, but there is this need to connect, and the safety, I think, that's felt within the smallness of a community, as opposed to the vast unknown of some of these big gathering spots. But I was curious about your picture, and then today when you and I had talked as you were coming here, you were coming back from the beach, good Israeli Shabbos at the beach. tell us what it's like with COVID-19 in Israel. Broadly, but also
Yeah.
as much as you can, specifically for you and your young growing family, because we know you guys are handling it. You're in a different place than we are right now.
Yeah, I'll kind of walk you through it, and I think there's a lot of things that contribute to being a different situation. It's all surrounding holidays. At Purim, there was already these talking about this disease, and people were questioning, should we meet for Purim or not? And it was everyone met for Purim, and they said maybe people don't feel comfortable, but we'll try to maintain distance. But it wasn't really on people's radar screens. Then it was vacation here. The vacation ended, and our kids went back to school one day. It was like Thursday or Friday, and then they closed everything down, shut down, and the country was on lockdown. We didn't leave our homes, I would say, almost for a month, more or less. I live on kind of a main road in Jerusalem, and there was the police car was stationed right on our sidewalk in front of our house, like a roadblock, stopping people, asking them where they're going to make sure they were only the people who were essential workers, because nobody was supposed to leave their house. Or even go outside. We left our house on the 7th day of Pesach. We went outside to play in the street because there were no cars. And the police came after a while and said, okay, go back inside.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, so it was really, it was vacation. The schools were not set up for long distance learning, but they put something together. The teachers are really the heroes. And then it seemed that it was controlled. People were really in shock, maybe also by you. They're in their homes and kind of just trying to make it from day to day. If you have small children, to figure out what to do with them. If you're older and you're lonely and you suddenly can't see your family, or you have diseases or things that you're not allowed to come in contact. People have parents in old age homes, where there was a huge pandemic in the old age homes, and they were under complete lockdown and very lonely kind of existence. We were trying to volunteer where we could. Surrounding the holidays, we would go help deliver boxes of food and just leave the food on people's doorsteps for them. And then they said after the holiday, let's see if we can open up the country. Israel also has closed borders, which in a sense helps. There's no tourists coming in and out. Either you're in Israel or you're not. And the Palestinian Authority was also even more vigilant. Really, it was this kind of sense of everybody is focused on this and protecting their towns and villages, and that was really what was happening here. So everything was really, really tightly controlled. And they started opening up the schools where they let first graders and second graders come to school in small groups. And last week they let everybody come out, and they opened the stores, and on Thursday they opened the restaurants, and a week ago they opened the parks and the beaches, and with the national parks they can only let a certain number of people in, and the beach. We went to a very quiet beach today in Ashdod. I heard they closed the beaches in Tel Aviv. There were so many people there. Very quiet, very spread out, very much in outside with yourselves. So we felt that was okay. But then maybe you've heard there's a high school in Jerusalem, a very large high school in Jerusalem, that there were a bunch of cases there. And so now that school is shut down. At that school, there are children who have siblings who are in my children's school. So there was a big debate, should our school shut down? Well, they're not going to shut down, but they're saying people, maybe you don't want to send your kids to school tomorrow. But the issue is really that people have to go to work. So because the places of business are opening up again. So there a lot of uncertainty. We're very prepared for the rules to change from day to day. All after school activities are supposed to open this week. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. And in our community, I'm very careful. We're very careful to really to follow the rules and to learn the rules very well. Every few days we have new rules. And we all consult with each other in different communities. So we started out praying outside together like that. A week and a half ago, we were allowed to move inside again with sterilizing everything, cleaning everything, sitting distance-wise. But we still have people who are in protected groups, problematic groups, people who cannot leave their homes, who have serious illnesses or elderly. So we stream them in on Facebook, and then it was a holiday, and it was also a lot of people weren't clear that they were around or they wanted to meet. So I said, you know what? Let's go back to Zoom. Let's have Kabbalat Shabbat on Zoom, and we had more than a million on Zoom, and so that I think is a very important tool. But we're in a time of uncertainty. It's one thing to say, okay, we're under lockdown. It's very clear. But now it's like, can we go out? Do we go out? Should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? Can I be with these people? How many people? Were they close? It's confusing. It's confusing. Yeah. It's extremely challenging. New reality. Yeah. We call it, the word in Hebrew for routine is shigra, and we don't say COVID, we say corona. So we're calling it shigrona. It's our corona routine.
Yeah, I think that uncertainty piece of, do you go out, do you stay in, how much do you expand your bubble, all of that. I think we're all feeling that. BC is opening up very slowly also. The analogy was given, it's not a light switch, it's a dial that we're turning. And I liked that, I thought. I do. And we'll see. We've been very fortunate, and I don't think it's just luck. I think it's really good planning and good leadership from our public health officials and our political officials here in this province in particular, that our curve was never very steep, and most of our instances were in age homes or in healthcare workers working in age homes, a few in food processing, a few in our prisons, of course. But other places in Canada, that has not been their experience, and we do have more porous borders. Even though the border between the United States and Canada is closed, it's still open for essential goods and services, and so much of our commerce goes across that border. And that's one of our big challenges, which is that I think that many Canadians feel that part of what has kept helped our curve flatten is the ability to close our border. But how long can we do that? And are we equal partners in that discussion in terms of the need from the United States to open the border and those kinds of things? I know that at our congregation we have of course gone to Zoom as we're doing now, and I think that we'll live in this world. We always were streaming. I think we'll live in this world a little bit in both places, as far as I can see going forward. I think we're going to continue to do this. As I mentioned, last night was my first Friday night off since January, and found my niece was having her confirmation, her siyum, for religious school in San Francisco. So we watched that service on our sofa, and it was pretty nice. I had a drink, my feet were up. I could do shul like that. I get the appeal. It's very nice. But our congregation has certainly provided essential and emergency services to our membership, and we've made masks, and we've done gardening, and all sorts of kinds of informational programs and stuff. What has your congregation done to support your community in the midst of the pandemic?
Yeah, I'll tell you, like I said, I was on sabbatical when this whole thing went down, and it was really a big dilemma what to do, and also felt a sense of helplessness, and knowing that everybody was home and going through this alone in a sense, or maybe with your immediate family, and that's the time when you need community. So I said to the congregation, look, this is an extraordinary time. We need to do something together. So that's when we started doing the Zoom tefillot, the Zoom prayers. And I said, I don't want a Facebook stream. I want, the important thing is that we are here all together, to see the faces together when we can be together. And that was really important, that we could see everybody up on the screen, and we had time for everybody to share what was going on with them, and also checking in with people. I think it's really the time we need to really be here for each other. For example, one of the biggest industries that are hit here is tourism. And being in Jerusalem, so Hadassah, there are a lot of people who work in tourism, and their income just went to zero. And that is not something that the government is kicking in to help for. It's kind of, they fall between the cracks, these kind of people. So that's been something we've paid attention to. And then, of course, in this time, not dying from corona, but we had some congregants whose parents passed away during this time. And that's a very strange situation. Setting up virtual, I'm sure you know this also, but setting up virtual Shiva calls and how do we mark this together? So those were just checking in with everybody and make sure everybody, we could be there for each other. And also when we resumed, we have a study group, and that study group has become like a lifeline, a real source of also emotional support. What communities do best to really focus in the community for each other.
Yeah. We only have a few more minutes, but I know that in my sharing with our congregation, we've identified, in the midst of the curse, there are some blessings. And like you said, this checking in with each other, people joining you online that may not have been able to join you in person for a variety of reasons. That certainly has been our experience as well. And I love your idea of being able to see the faces and checking in. We doing something a little differently here because we're a little concerned about Zoom bombing and people coming into our services, but just in talking with you, I have an idea of how we can overcome that. So I'll put my technology hat on and figure that out later. But what has been for you some of the blessings, and this doesn't have to be for your congregation necessarily, it could be for Israel, it could be for your own family. What have been some of the blessings in the midst of the pandemic?
Oh yeah, I think, look, I first of all, I count my blessings. I think all of us who have our health and have at least part of our salaries, that we can live here. We've all had budget cuts, all of us, to know that we're okay, we're here, and that we can live with less. We really managed to do that. To see the streets empty and to breathe the fresh air. And I would say every single person I know, because Jerusalem is a beautiful garden city, and so Hadassah is gorgeous. Everybody's a garden, so Hadassah. Everybody was out in their garden every day and noticing how the flowers grow, and noticing how this plant came up. We were paying so much more attention to our natural world, and I think the blessings of Zoom. We can't over Zoom it, right? We get zoomed out or Zoombies, but people learned what flexible work can be. That when things maybe will go back to normal, you actually don't have to go into an office 5-6 days a week. Allow for that flexibility, which also is good for our environment. And the fact that my parents in Florida, joined us in Hadassah, and on Pesach, I'm sure you all experienced this, that we suddenly had Seder with people who, why didn't we think of this before? It seemed weird and awkward and strange then, but now that we get used to it, I think we have to continue to utilize this technology to bring us together. Like we would have done this if we would have. We've perfected technology for our bar and bat mitzvah groups, right?
Yes, now
we've done stuff but now we can really do it.
Yeah. Well, I've shared with our congregation, and the other night we had a community Tikkun Leil Shavuot and across Canada, really, and that we're in a Yavna moment, that we really are reinventing Judaism for our modern age. We can't go to the temple again, and so how do you do Judaism in a way that is responds to the challenges of modernity? It sounds like you guys have done that. It also sounds like you're coming back to a little bit of the normal, and I am envious of that. But I hear the anxiety about it too. And I think Israelis are really good at dealing with that. We're a little less familiar with dealing with the life, right on the edge there. You guys live there all the time, but it's hard to imagine Israel without tourism this summer. I can't even begin. What do you think that's going to, this is my last question. What do you think that's going to be like?
Oh, I think it's really rough. I think it's really, really, really rough. So many industries hit here. I'll say two things. One is there's going to be a lot of internal tourism. Israelis are out of the country. They're traveling. But people are going to be, I think we're going to be traveling to different parts of Israel. But I think things will be crowded. We won't have the incoming tourism, but I think there'll be a lot of local tourism. And I think also it's such an opportunity for creativity. Every crisis gives us opportunity, and I think a lot of interesting entrepreneurship ideas and creative ideas are going to come out of this. It has to.
Wow. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's getting late there. So Shavua Tov is probably come and gone, but we'll visit to you again. It's so great to do things with your congregation. We, as I said to the Pfeiffers, we do very much plan to be back in Israel next summer for a temple trip in August. Alavai, and God willing, that we'll all be able to do that, and hopefully you'll be able to travel to see your family in the States and stop by us in Vancouver anytime. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And I want to thank Arts of Canada and the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism, Reform Judaism in Israel, for sponsoring this talk. I know they're going to share it widely. And it's wonderful to have Rabbi Stacey Blank from Congregation Shir Hadassah and Tzur Hadassah. I'm Rabbi Dan Moskovitz from Temple Sholom in Vancouver. I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Carrie Brown and Cantor Tausig now to conclude the rest of our service. Stacey, Shavua Tov.
Great to see all of you. Shabbat Shalom.
Hi, Stacey. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you, Carrie. Dan. Okay, we'll be in touch.